I just feel at the moment that GPT-4 is going to wipe the floor with it when that browsing plugin is live, because it just seems to be so much smarter in understanding what you're looking for. Toby, you good?
All good, yeah.
Yeah, good. Our second episode doing this, and it would probably be crazy not to chat a bit about GPT-4, wouldn't it?
Definitely.
With everything that's going on.
Oh yeah, I think there's a lot to cover in this. It's getting quite exciting.
Yeah, it's and I still think it's really early days as well. It's going to be insane what you can do with some of this stuff soon. But you mentioned recently to me about the plugins, and I think that's going to be a game changer as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we discussed last time, but Chat GPT-3 and 4, both good in its own rights. But I think this announcement last week or the week before kind of just really got me kind of excited about the potential. I think the kind of the ability to plug into lots of different software systems just presents so many opportunities. And for me, just being able to access the internet and being able to access all these different third-party platforms really presents a lot of opportunity that lots and lots of businesses can take a lot from. I mean, as someone runs e-commerce stores, I straight away was just thinking of how I could automate the systems I use through Shopify, WooCommerce, etc. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what your feelings are behind it all, but it was exciting for me.
Yeah, I think the third party plugins are exciting. Especially, there's the travel ones, and I know there's a load of others in there. I can't remember exactly. I haven't got the list in front of me. But there's quite a few already that are potentially quite exciting. But I think the big one is the browsing plugin that's going to be coming, so that you can finally hook up to live information. And I don't know if you've seen examples of it being used yet. I'm on the wait list for it, so I'm looking forward to trying it. But when you look at examples, GPT-4 is just smart enough to know, actually, I need some up-to-date information here, and at the top of the window it says something along the lines of browsing plugin activated or something like that, and then it starts pulling in information and using that information. But if it's just say advice or just something factual or something where it knows, it's smart enough to know it doesn't need that up-to-date data, it just doesn't trigger it. It just knows, and it just answers. So it's really smart, but it's going to be a game changer for it, I think. And it's like I said, I still think it's early days, and there's loads and loads more to come.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've pulled up the list of the ones that I think they're going to kick off with, but I've seen a more extensive list another time. But I think one of the videos I saw was an example of using it to book trips. So like plugging into Expedia and saying, "Oh, I want to go to Bali. Can you find me the best flights for this time?" And scanning lots of different search engines or flight booking search engines, and then just pulling all that information. For a few prompts, is quite powerful. And then the other ones they're looking at initially is Shop, so the payment provider through Shopify and Klarna. So that obviously opens up access to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of e-commerce stores, potentially being able to compare prices for similar products via that, which I think will be interesting. I think for me, the other big one that they've got listed here in terms of like e-commerce and software and content is the Zapier plugin, and providing APIs through so many different platforms and systems. Kind of like, if you think through it strategically and provide some logic, I think the possibilities are quite endless. even just with these initial plugins, and that's kind of the thing that really got me excited when I saw the announcement.
Yeah, the Zapier ones is interesting because it's one of those situations where a lot of those platforms that can use Zapier, they'll probably end up tying directly in at some point anyway. So you can get early access to those, but then potentially connect directly. It makes you wonder what all this is going to do for, I know, again, it's early days, but things like Bard and Bing. I don't know if you've had a play, and it's probably too early for me to say, give such an opinion on it, but I haven't been that impressed so far. I might give you a couple of examples, actually. Let me have a quick.
I think even from that intro, you obviously tweeted that you were on the waitlist for Bart, and then they said, "Oh, Bart's made you a personalised poem," and then your personalised poem is the same as my personalised poem. So, I mean, that shouts bodge job, if you ask me, rushing things through and just trying to make it look like it's smarter than it probably is.
Yeah, so they both, the other day, I just thought I'd just have a little play about testing with them. And I asked them both, what's happening in the world of SEO this week? And it doesn't really save the history well in Bard. It kind of gives you snippets. But it said something along the lines of, SEMrush have released a new tool called SEO Spider. And I said, I thought SEO Spider belonged to Screaming Frog. And then it said something along the lines of, oh, sorry, you're right. That does belong to Screaming Frog. Right, okay. So and then I said, have SEMrush also released a tool called SEO Spider? Oh, no, I made a mistake there. They haven't released a tool called SEO Spider. They do have a tool called SEO Toolkit. I said, but that's not new, is it? You said this was a new tool released this week. Oh, yeah, sorry, no, they haven't released a new tool. So, that was just the most pointless conversation ever. So, yeah, that was a waste of time. And then Bing, I tried the same question. And what did it say? It said something really brief, or a bit vague, sorry. Like Google have recently announced they'll be rolling out a new feature that allows you to see how many times their website has appeared in Google search results. And I thought that doesn't sound like anything new. And the links it gives you at the bottom to learn more were just home pages like Search Engine Journal. And I said, what date was this announced? The response was, I apologise for the confusion. I couldn't find the exact date when Google announced these features. However, according to SEO This Week, these features were recently announced by Google. I hope this helps. No, not really. So I've got no link to it. They can't tell me when it was released or anything more about it. And I just thought, this is useless. I haven't been impressed so far, I must admit.
So I haven't dug into Bing or Bart, and Bart or Bert?
Bard.
Bard, that's it. I haven't dug into either of those, and I know with OpenAI the data goes back to November 21. Does Bing and Bard, do they have? Is their data supposed to be up to date? Is it scraping, crawling websites at the moment, or is it?
Yeah, so I think it's based on their index. So they're anything they've got in their index, so they can pull information from that. So in theory, it should be pretty good, depending on how they're pulling that information. So I've done things on Bard where I've said, what is the search volume of this keyword, and it can pull data directly from Google Ads data or keyword tool. So you can get search volume data. So there's some useful things like that. But the information coming through, I just feel at the moment that GPT-4 is going to wipe the floor with it when that browsing plugin is live, because it just seems to be so much smarter in understanding what you're looking for, and just so much more conversational. And so, for example, I was having a play about with GPT-4 today, trying to create a Chrome extension. You know me, I don't code. I have no idea how to create a Chrome extension, but I've heard people, whipping one up quite quickly just using ChatGPT. So I thought, I'll give it a go. So I go on there. How do you create a Chrome extension? It tells you what files you need, that you need to store it in a folder, that you need to do X, Y, Z. Okay, I want to create a Chrome extension that does this. And it broke down all the files. It gave you all the code. Right, copy and paste this into a text file, save it as this into a folder called this. And it gave you all of the files you needed, all of the code, just copy and paste job. And then it tells you how to upload the, in developer mode, upload the Chrome extension to Chrome. And I had issues with the one I was creating. So I went back and I started troubleshooting. Oh, I get this far and then this happens. Oh, okay, it sounds like this isn't communicating with this. Let's try and fix that. Go back to this file and paste in this bit at the bottom or replace it with this code. And it's just so much, it's really smart. You can troubleshoot with it. It understands what you're saying to it and where things are going wrong. And it's really clever. And although it's a very different engine and, Bard and Bing, they're more for almost like a browse, getting data from the internet. It just feels anything I've searched for, even if it's just information I want to find that I, would search for in a similar way just by going to Google or Bing, the information coming back, I'd rather just go to Google or Bing and just search for it. It hasn't been that great.
So how much do you think that those two are looking more at kind of like schema markups and question and answer stuff rather than like FAQs that may be marked up or highlighting, sites that have kind of had a bit of an SEO treatment rather than it actually being a clever language model? Because it does sound a bit like whoever gets the best markup, almost like, on Google when you have like the FAQs markup. I wonder how much of it is just pulling information like that.
Yeah, it could do. I mean, it probably does it in a similar way to however they do their knowledge graph stuff and answer cards and all that sort of thing. So if you search for something in Google that is just a straightforward featured snippet and it gives you the answer within that featured snippet, it's probably just pulling similar stuff into Bard. It just doesn't seem to be as smart. You can't converse with it and get it to give you more information on that. I think one of them, and I can't remember whether it was Bard or Bing now. I said, I think it was Bard. I said, can you? It gave me a stat, and I said, oh, can you give me a link for that or the source for that? I'm a text only system and I can't give sources or links. Oh, great. So I end up, you end up having to go to Google anyway. So it's, it's a bit painful in that sense, but at the moment it feels quite basic and they probably are just pulling it in the same way as they just deal with search results and featured snippets and things like that.
Yeah. I've seen some, and I wonder the reason why they're not giving you that information is because it's almost, they're taking that information and not even giving credit to the source. And I've seen cases where they're talking about a plugin that you can potentially put on your website to stop ChatGPT from taking your information, and then just like spinning it up in their own way and not giving credit. And it's an interesting situation for, say, content sites who will probably be putting a lot of effort into creating good content, and then just that information getting taken and not attributed to it.
Yeah, that's the problem with it, with things like Bard as well, isn't it? Because, Bing, I guess, as well. But I know there was a whole conversation a while back around, are things like Bard going to be the death of Google search? And it can't be, because, before you get to ads and even start thinking about, the ways that Google monetize, you've also got to think about the creators. All of this information, Google rely on those creators and, content on people's websites for that information. If they just start pulling everything into an AI system and everyone starts drifting away from search and onto that, what's the incentive for creators to create anymore? There's just no incentive anymore. So information starts going out of date, and people aren't building websites or creating anymore, or they're certainly not bothering with Google. So I don't know. They've got to think very hard about how they integrate all this into search, and I know they definitely are thinking about that. But it's yeah, I don't think it's just going to be a straightforward, oh, this is going to take over. Certainly from the point of view of things like Bard, I can't say for things like GPT-4 and whatever comes after that, and the browsing plugins. You don't know how people are going to use that and where that's going to go.
Yeah, I think my immediate reaction to this plugin information was like the potential danger for content and software sites. And I think anything like any sort of technology like this, there is a little bit of a level of anxiety around what the potential is, and actually, could you be a casualty of it all? I don't know if, I feel like if you're not on top of it, you could quite potentially get left behind. I don't know how your kind of emotions and feelings are around the potential, and whether it's going to affect any of the businesses you run, or even, just the business you run. If you feel, because I think for me, like there's the content element, but there's also a software element where if you know how to ask the right questions in something like ChatGPT, and you know where to plug it stuff in, could you get, what you need from software that you wouldn't potentially be able to get without someone creating those plugins, APIs between different places, and ChatGPT could do that for you, for an individual. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think it will affect anything I'm working on, but I think it could potentially help it in some ways, and we have been looking at certain ways whether or not it could help. But I do know some people that have been quite worried by this. So someone I follow on Twitter who's in the SaaS space, he was getting increasingly concerned the other day, because he was saying, we're at a point where ChatGPT can do X, and certainly, people with access to the API can do this. If it can start to do that, then it kind of makes my tool redundant. And he's grown his SaaS product to quite a decent level, with a all right sized team behind it now as well. It's grown pretty quickly over the last couple of years, and he's now looking at it thinking, actually, this is almost at a point where it can do what my tool does. And that's not to say people would then just suddenly leave and start using other means and ChatGPT or something like that, but he's certainly going to have to start thinking about, well, I need to up my game and look at how I can do things better and differently. So yeah, it's going to affect a lot of software companies, I think, or software products certainly. But I mean, there's still a lot out there it won't, at least for a long time. But yeah, it's gonna hit some people hard, I think. And I do think this is bigger than a lot of people are thinking. I heard someone say the other day that 99% of the world don't give a crap about ChatGPT, and you can kind of understand where they're coming from, because if you just go and talk to some of your mates who are in regular 9-to-5s, and it's not necessarily tech savvy, and you start talking about ChatGPT, they haven't got a clue what you're talking about. But that is similar to the very, very early days of the internet, when no one really knew what the internet was. You could argue this is a little bit like that, because I do think the way this is going, it's probably going to be massive. And not saying it's necessarily going to be internet level massive, but I don't know what you think, but could be.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's got potential to be the Web 4 in a sense. It could be basically just the interface to the whole of the web. You could sit there and just plug into everything and just create commands, build websites, instruct websites, figure out how much stock you need to be buying. It's quite scary, I think, in that sense. I think like people I've spoken to who are maybe not so well informed with it, you kind of like mention it to them, and it's almost a bit like they're not that interested. But also, it's a little bit like AI has a stigma where they almost bury their head in the sand because the robots are coming, jobs are going to potentially get lost, and I think that's why it's quite an important space to be on top of and just understand how to utilize it. That's kind of how I'm viewing it, and just keeping tabs on it constantly, just so I can be maybe not ahead of the curve, but on the curve to some extent.
I do agree that people who aren't on top of it are probably going to fall behind, and I think that depends what line of work they're in and position they're in and what they're doing and what they're working on. But I mean, it will affect jobs. It will affect how people interact with the internet. It will affect how people do things, and that that will start off in the tech world as you see in a lot now, but it will start branching into just everyday things and products as well.
Yeah,
I think
just kind of like going back to the Klarna and Shop Pay plugin, if they can get a plugin for Stripe and PayPal, you're talking about probably the big four payment providers through e-commerce sort of stores. So you could sit there and go, find me a pair of size 9 Nike trainers in white, and then maybe give it a specific model type. And you don't need to use Google. You don't need to crawl through, say, a couple of pages of Google. You could potentially just pull up the price comparisons for every single shop that has that product, which I think will be very interesting, almost like a skipping SEO in a sense. I don't know. There's just so many opportunities and so much potential that it's kind of like just trying to get your head around it all and what way to go. Like obviously we started off with, you mentioned Midjourney before we jumped on this. I haven't really dug into that, but I did see something on Twitter earlier where it's someone was plugging in like logo ideas for big brands like Starbucks, Amazon, Pepsi, and it was spitting out logos in different styles. And so I assume it's like an image generator. I'm not 100% sure what Midjourney is.
You haven't used it yet?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it is just AI image generation, and some people have done some pretty cool stuff with it. I don't know. There was one the other day with someone had done a picture of Donald Trump kind of getting bundled by security and getting arrested, and he's trying to break free. And so people are doing all sorts of wacky stuff. I found it a bit hit and miss. If you want to do quite artistic stuff, it can be amazing, and some of the stuff it produces is like out of this world. But if with some things, like it gets text horribly wrong. So I said something like, do this, I think it was a cartoon image or hand-drawn image, and someone is wearing a t-shirt with the Google logo on it, something like that. And it didn't like the Google logo. It just did a load of mess. So I said, okay, let's just go for the writing, the word Google. And it kind of did like a weird E with loads of lines across it, and then an O, and then just a load. It's just scribbles, really. And at for one of you get 4 image choices. One of them, it wasn't even on the t-shirt; it was on the wall. And it's just like sometimes what it produces is an absolute mess. I thought with one of them, I thought I'll be more specific. I'll say that I want the writing across his chest, and all it did was just basically rip this guy's chest t-shirt open, so he's baring his chest. That's not quite what I asked for. Yeah, so it's hard to get right, but you see some of the prompts people are putting in where they're being quite specific, and they're doing some really cool stuff. But some of it's still messy. But it's gonna get better, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I haven't been on Midjourney.
It's like we were talking about last time with e-commerce. It will get better for e-commerce as well.
Like creating renders for products and stuff like that.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
because I had that idea maybe a couple months ago, and I jumped onto DALL-E 2, which sounds very similar to Midjourney. And I think on that, I started one Saturday morning. I was just sat there uploading photos from my trip to Iceland, and it was like throwing out a load of random like variations of it, where like my friend was wearing a yellow jacket, and then the second photo of him, he had a yellow tangerine face with tiny little features in his face. So I mean, it's quite good fun. We had a bit of a giggle about it, but some of the stuff I was getting back was quite obscure. Some of it was quite good. I'll try and dig some of it out a bit later and send it over to you. But I think again there is a lot of potential with renders for e-commerce stores, and I think some people do some really nice bits, as you say, artistically. And
yeah, there's. Have you seen? There's. What's his name? Is it Peter Levels or something like that on Twitter? Do you follow him?
I don't think so.
He's created something. Let me just find it. He's created something that is for kind of lifestyle e-commerce images, which might be worth you checking out. I think he's got a few things now. Actually, is photoai.com. It might be. Just checking this one out. I think it's photoai.com. Fire your photographer, the heading is. Take stunning photos with the first synthetic AI photo studio. And you can upload photos, and then you can use a certain model. And I haven't had a proper play with this, but it's he's up to quite a high user count already on this. There's a lot of people using it. But that's early days, but that is that's one guy already tackling the e-commerce space. There's going to be a load more, and although I think they've still got a lot of things to get right, and it's obviously going to improve, you just think about how quick all this has happened. People only started talking about ChatGPT. It feels like weeks ago, but it was months ago. And it took off, and it got an insane amount of, 100 million odd users or whatever it was in a week, or some insane number. But that wasn't that long ago. And, now they've released GPT-4, and it seems miles ahead of its predecessor. And you just think, this is moving quickly. Just think where this is going to be in a few years' time. So it does make you wonder. You joke about SEO and things like that, but it does make you wonder whether the whole SEO is dead type thing might actually be a reality in a few years' time.
I fully sort of expect Google not to be so dominant. I think this is a real indicator in their dominance dropping off. It will be an interesting few years, I think, with AI technology and where it goes.
And I guess from a marketing point of view, I think a lot of this it's going to very much change how we do marketing.
I mean, there's a lot. I think you're like me in terms of how you've used ChatGPT initially. It's a productivity hack in a sense. Being able to pull information in and data in one place and sort information and use it to summarize books. I think we've both had a little play with, which is really handy, especially books I've read in the past and quite want to read again, but don't really find time. So can you give me a 500-word summary? So I find that interesting. I know people have used it for rewriting CVs. I mean, you could probably sit here all day and write thousands and thousands of use cases. So I think there's not going to be a single industry he doesn't touch. And it's just, trying to keep up with it it's going to be hard work, but it's
I
exciting.
think people are going to find more and more and more uses for it over time. I mean, like even since we last spoke, I've been using it for more and more, and even things just like the podcast. You know, I'll interview someone, I'll come up with the most mundane title and think, yeah, that's naff, right? Here, you know, GPT, give us a hand, throw that in there, give me 5 variations of YouTube headings that with a good hook for this interview I've done about XYZ, and it spits out some really good suggestions. And sometimes I'll take a mixture of those, maybe take the second half of one of them and the first part of another, and just mix them up a bit. But it certainly gives you some good ideas. And I started using it for show notes as well. You know, so I interviewed someone or other about XYZ. Please write some show notes, and it's I've done it a couple of times now, and it's amazing how it doesn't need much editing. It's kind of spot on what it writes, and it's almost like they've listened to the episode. You know, it's really smart. So you know, me and you will find more uses for it. Everyone out there will find more uses for it and share it. And the plugins are going to come, and it's going to get better and better, and it's going to change a lot of how we work. But also how we think about marketing. I haven't really spoken to you much about this because the episode's only just been released, but I interviewed Rand Fishkin, and we were talking a lot about Spark Toro, and he's probably in quite a good position with all this, because whereas there's a big question mark around how this will affect things like Google search, the whole idea of Spark Toro is not relying on Google and Facebook, and actually looking at various other channels. So looking at audiences and looking at what podcasts are they listening to, what websites are they visiting, what subreddits do they go to, what people do they follow on social channels, and what social channels are they on, and so on. So, you know, it's probably more the way people are going to have to think in the future, but who knows?
Yeah, I think diversification has always been one of those things that people in marketing talk about. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I think even now, if your traffic is primarily through Google, which I think a lot of people's probably is, even if it's PPC, organic or display, you probably, I mean, less display, but those two in particular, if you're taking up, if it's a large chunk of your traffic, you kind of want to probably be thinking about getting more traffic through other sources, building email databases and social profiles. I think it's potentially going to be an eye opener for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. I mentioned on the last episode, changing the subject a bit, that I wanted to just bring up some bits about social. Probably a good time to mention those, isn't it? The reason I wanted to talk about these is just because they caught my attention a little bit. One was just about a guy who had tweeted something political, and a politician had replied and said something about, maybe your 15 followers will be interested, or something like that. And just off the back of that tweet, he within a few hours he'd gone up to over 1,100 followers, and then I think about an hour after that he'd gone up to a couple of thousand, and then the day after he was up to 10,000, and then I think it was a couple of weeks later or a few weeks later he'd gone up to 48,000, and that just got me thinking about, I mean, like, growth on Twitter can be hard, and you know, people who are being consistent and on there all the time and kind of battling to grow their likes up, their followers up gradually, they'll know it's not easy. But it just shows, just off the back of commenting and just being in the right place at the right time and people seeing the right tweet, that it can get you just huge growth in terms of followers. And that's advice that I was given recently, was actually, if you're trying to grow your following, forget, don't worry about tweeting so much. Worry about commenting, and just comment on the people who get the traction. Just make sure you're commenting early, commenting something valuable, and just kind of being seen where people are actually looking. And the other one I wanted to mention, which it kind of made me laugh, but I'm starting to see a little more and more of this recently, was an ad on Facebook that Grant Cardone had put out. And it was, so I've got it in front of me here. I'll just read some of it to you. So it's a bit about Grant's interview with Kevin Hart. And it said here, check out Grant's interview with Kevin Hart. Here are some quick Kevin facts, just in case you've been living under a rock. And it says it's kind of got tick icons, and it says he's the world's highest grossing comedian. But the second one, it says, started a venture capital fund, VEM. So a typo there. And then the last point, the fourth point, is has his own comedy network called Laugh, spelled LAUHGH, out loud. And the comments exploded. Now there's this whole thing around, the more likes and comments you can get, they're similar to platforms like LinkedIn as well. The more early likes and comments you can get, the more traction you're likely to get, because LinkedIn or Facebook are going to think, oh, people are liking this, let's show it to more people. But the comments exploded on there, but it was all people talking about the typos. And I've seen a few people doing this, and it just seems to be a crafty little tactic where, how can we get more comments? Oh, let's put some daft typos in there or something like that. I don't know if you've seen any of this.
No, I haven't, but it makes sense, doesn't it? Because people love to be the grammar police in a sense. So if people have the opportunity to put someone down or correct them, they will. And it plays into the algorithm, like you said. I find it interesting. The other day, I think Twitter released kind of their organic algorithm, kind of the top things they look at to indicate whether a tweet should or a profile should be shown more. And I think there's a list of like 10 things, and some of it was like follower to following ratio. Obviously, if you've got a massive follower ratio and lower following, they'll downgrade it. And there's a bunch of other interesting things that they kind of took into account, which I think is the first time they've released anything like that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. You'll have to send that to me.
Yeah, I did. I think it's stuff that you'd kind of think would be the key points that you would probably take as stuff they would take into account. But I get going back to the thing you said about the commenting on other people's tweets. I suppose that plays into people's egos, doesn't it? People are probably more interested if you're paying attention to them. And that's probably why you get more traction that way, because if you're commenting constantly on someone's tweets, they're probably going to pay attention to you and then follow you, and then that could almost snowball if you do that across multiple accounts. And then you're being seen on other people's accounts commenting, so you're then associated with that person, even if you're not followed by them. You seem like you're friendly with them because of the way you're tweeting. So other people will be like, oh, if this person is talking to this Z-lister, they're associating you with them, and therefore they're more likely to follow you because they're associating you with someone that they would deem as a high status individual.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's a bit of both. I think it's the visibility thing. You're more likely to be seen because more people are seeing their tweets and they're browsing through the comments, and then they're coming across you. But also the association that you're talking about, where this person knows that person, and they're seeing you. You're getting that visibility, so then they're more likely to follow you. So yeah, I think it's probably a combination of both, but it does definitely work better.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go, isn't it? If you think about it logically, because if you're just tweeting, say you start Twitter and you've got 0 followers and you're just tweeting, you're tweeting to no one. No one's going to see it unless you get lucky with hashtags or the phrases you use, but generally people scouting some of those terms might not be the people you're trying to get in front of. So yeah, I think that's a good one to try out, actually.
Yeah, I think you need to get up to quite a high following before you start actually getting decent traction. Because people just, even if you're in the hundreds or low thousands, if you think of how many people are actually seeing that, because it's not on the feed for long, so it's I think once you get to big numbers, then you can people start liking it quicker, then it's shown more, then you get more traction. But before that, I think commenting is the best route.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely.
We're at 40, so that's probably a good place to wrap up, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I've obviously got a list of interesting things that I've seen that we can probably discuss next time. But
yeah, let's definitely go through that next time then.
Yeah, cool.
Until next time.
Yeah, thank you.
See ya.
See you later.
Next.